We got some big news surrounding the flight model. I'm going to make a video about this later this week. I'm going to make a video about this that's a little more concise. It explains what the master modes changes are, why the flight model is changing, what quantum boost is, where that's coming from, operator modes, all that stuff, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. But we're about to get into this deep and look at kind of how the game is once again changing around the flight model and why. And, you know, what the crew here at CIG is saying is the reasoning behind it.
Master modes. We'd been talking about master modes for quite some time. We've been building it up as the big savior of the spaceship combat experience.
Okay, right off the bat, we're already getting derailed. Here we go. Space Tomato style. Let's go back. Oh man, how much do you hate it, huh? Trust me, it's worth it. We're going to go all the way back to when Master Modes was introduced. It's like 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago. This is back when David Coulson was still there too. Hey, thanks for the subs, Shoki.
Hi, my name is Yogi Klatt. I'm a gameplay programmer in the vehicle feature team. I'm here with Rich Towler, David Coulson, Jed Talbot, and Johnny Young. And today we're gonna talk to you about the upcoming changes to the flight systems and the combat systems, which are done specifically for Squadron 42, but which will eventually find their way to the persistent universe. We want to define ship roles for the game because every role in itself and every ship can offer unique gameplay opportunities for individual players.
We want to provide a lot more variety to the gameplay in Star Citizen, a lot more opportunity for different careers, different responsibilities, and different sort of perspectives and views on gameplay where people contribute different types of work and different types of jobs.
Star Citizen is supposed to be a big expansive game with giving the players lots of chances to have a variety of different experiences. It's not just about combat.
All right, convince me about master modes though, yeah? Like
good at one versus one, but they excel at N versus N engagements. So when we have group battles. Medium fighters for us, internally we call multi-role fighters because they have a lot of hard points, so they have a lot of loadout flexibility. So a player can tune them to the role whatever they want, but they will never reach the performance of dedicated ships.
A lot of the medium fighters sometimes come with a turret as well, so they've got that additional gameplay of the turret, which is aimed to kind of counter the lack of maneuverability that their ships have.
And then additionally to that, we have racing ships, which are basically just really fast at changing the velocity vectors. And interceptors, which we basically just want to go very fast in the forward area, but never reaching really the performance envelope of dedicated dogfighters.
Interceptors are designed to kind of catch up to ships and disable them. So they come with kind of advanced kind of hardware on these ships.
Bombers, on the other hand, are, well, they're just slobbing heavy ordnance at larger targets, so you use them to take out bigger ships. But they're not really good at, well, killing small fighters. And then from smaller ships coming to larger ships like Constellation and up, we want to change the gameplay to be less about positional combat, but more going into the naval style of combat, where it's important to show the correct shield and fire arcs and timing your shots over long distances.
So the purpose of ship roles is to really help players understand what ships should be used and when they should be used. And it's really about delivering on those kind of gameplay promises that we've been talking about, over the past, kind of several years.
If every ship is the same, it's not fun. But if we have dedicated ships with dedicated pros and cons, then we can create very exciting combat environments. And the biggest challenge we see in order to get that gameplay we want is the current speed that we have in combat.
It's a subject we've talked about many, many times in the past. And it's something we've tried many things with. We've tried limiting things at speed. We've tried adjusting handling at speed. We've tried so many things to kind of manage the negative impact of speed on combat.
Okay, this right here. That was a call for help. That whole sentence was literally them being like, please, nothing's working.
It's a subject we've talked about many, many times in the past. And it's something we've tried many things with. We've tried limiting things at speed. We've tried adjusting handling at speed. We've tried so many things to kind of manage the negative impact of speed on combat.
If you go back in the roadmap, you can actually find the proof of this. You can find the pudding. The pudding is there, and it's not tomato flavored. Thank God, that'd be gross. You go back to, I think it's 310, and you've got high-speed combat here. Ship systems will suffer the strains of traveling at high speeds with maximum velocity, resulting in the restriction of some player options in the cockpit. Restrictions from high velocity, you say? Sounds a bit like nav mode. Creating a vulnerability that will push players into engagement at lower speeds. Sounds like you're trying to get people to go into, I don't know, maybe like a space combat, ship combat mode, SCM. I don't know what SCM stands for. SCM mode. This was a big attempt on their part to try and get people to naturally stop flying fast during combat. And they did this all the way back in 2020. They also did a couple other changes during that same time, like thruster efficiency curves. They changed the targeting methodology for how UI worked when you were doing that, turret and gunnery improvements. Basically, this was their first attempt at what they did with 323, which was to make turrets work better with slow combat ships when you have big ships around small ships. And it didn't work. The players didn't care. We continued to fly fast because the game allowed us to. There weren't enough deterrents. And I honestly think that if they had added more and more and more deterrents onto the flight model in order to get people to not fly fast during combat, they would have dealt with a whole bunch of complaints from that too. I think no matter what they tried to do, whether they did this artificially to slow speeds down or they did it naturally to slow speeds down, they were going to get a lot of complaints about slowing speeds down. They could have said, if you're flying too fast, your weapons literally will misfire and people will be like, that's crap, don't do that. If you're flying too fast, your thrusters will take too much damage and start to degrade faster. That's dumb, don't do that. Like, this was going to be painful either way, but I do wish that they had gone harder with this kind of stuff. I wish that we had the chance to see this impact engineering, impact power management, in atmosphere, it impact control surfaces. My problem with what we're about to go over in this update that they're going to talk about, they're going to say that from here, when they said 2 years ago that they could not get the speeds to slow down naturally based on the changes that they've made. We heard it here.
And the negative impact of speed on combat.
When ships...
He said it right there. To here, where they have now tried to force it instead artificially, much like hover mode did back in the past, and it hasn't worked. I feel like if we had gotten to do all of the other stuff first, maybe that wouldn't have been necessary, but we didn't get engineering until just now. And I'm kind of wondering, maybe could you go back and try that? I do think the one reason that they don't want to do that is because the balancing is going to be crazy for all the different ships, all the different components, and the variability of a power management system, all dictating when people can or cannot use their weapons and shields and quantum, is going to be really hard to get the whole idea of that figured out and be able to keep track of all of that. So I can understand them not really wanting to tie it into the engineering system, but I also feel like Master Modes did not get the chance to work that it seemed like they wanted to. But you know what? Maybe with all the noise and complaining, not calling you guys noisy, saying like general complaints from every direction is just feedback noise, right? That messes with your communication. It makes things more complicated. It makes things feel like there's more going on than not. Maybe that got loud enough to the point where they were like, you know what? Let's just cut Master Modes back and redirect it a little bit because it's not working and people are turning on it. People are choosing not to play because of it. It tried to do it and it didn't last, and that's kind of what we're gonna look into now.
It released to mixed reviews at times. You know, some people are for it, some people are less than for it. We'll just say that kindly. I want to talk about what our plan is, what our vision is. Where are we going with this? What is the plan moving forward with Master Modes? And I'm just going to take off and leave you two here. Thanks, guys.
Good call.
Right.
I'm also probably just
I
gonna...
think the big thing around master modes is that it never was designed to be a static piece of development. We always wanted to make sure that we were adding in new systems as they came along,
All right, fine.
and then influence those design decisions that we made at the time. And I think two big pieces of feature work that we're going to be bringing to Star Citizen that's going to have a drastic change on how we implement master modes is going to be crafting and quantum boost.
Okay, here's our first moment. Our first pizzazz moment of the video. Crafting and quantum boost. You know what? I'm going to let them explain how that's going to work. Then we'll talk about that.
So right now with master modes itself, we have obviously the two master modes, SCM and NAV. A big thing is that we're going to actually be demoting or converting those modes from master modes to operator modes.
Okay, it sounds like they're not getting right into it. They're actually talking on another detail, which I think is the most key change here. So first is, he said that crafting and the quantum boost are both a key part of how these changes are being carried out. If you've been around here, then you know I am a huge quantum boost stan. That's been one of the, like, I just released a video about it actually, that it was one of the top 5 things I think we could have seen to make the game better this year. This video here. One of the things in here was quantum boost at 6.5 minutes. This quantum is something we've known about for a while from last year at CitizenCon. It was the new way of traveling some sub 50 to 100,000 kilometers at a time. And it would basically allow you to free travel in any direction. This was shown by Yogi last year during the Master Modes presentation.
So
you can see
need
here.
to be hands-on for the whole time, and the speeds are naturally, well, slower, but it's not slow, it's still quantum traveling, right? Okay, so Brent, can you boost to, oh, reinforcement needed. Yeah, let's go there, let's boost. Oh, actually, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so what Brent is currently showing here is, I think I forgot to mention, quantum boosting works in every direction. You don't need nav points.
So that's pretty big, and that already tells us a pretty key detail about this. Once this is in the game, you don't need to have map markers on the globe to go to a place, right? When you know that there is an outpost somewhere, you know there's a mission somewhere, you can just point and go in that direction. And it's important because a lot of us have had those moments where you have to slow boat like 100 kilometers to get to a place that's not on official logs. And we're going to have more and more of those places. We're going to get a ton of points of interest with our Starkitect system they're working on. But we're also going to have data insecurity, which is like you go to a place, you're not going to have every quantum beacon because they got to have some level of data as a commodity being traded. So if you go a little bit forward, one of the other key points to this is you come forward here to the most recent Star Citizen, and they show us kind of a key detail of quantum boost that we didn't know about before, and I don't think existed until this year. I think this is a change that happened to quantum boost within the last year. In between the presentation that we just watched from last year's CitizenCon and this presentation, I think this changed to the point where you can quantum boost right here in atmosphere. They have not talked about this at all. They didn't really give us this idea last year when they were talking about quantum boost. And they also don't make they didn't make a big point of this even this year while talking about it. But it does seem even, at this point, I thought this was maybe inaccurate, or possibly they're stretching the physics a little bit, because normally I would think quantum boost would start at the same point that normal quantum travel would start, but they're showing us doing it all the way down here below clouds. Maybe that's just something they're doing for like this scene or this video. But then we get back to this video, you're going to hear in a couple minutes, he's going to say, quantum boost will go all the way down to the levels at which we are currently traveling in nav. So they are working on quantum boost to be something that can happen not just in space. And I think that's interesting. Quantum boost will be something that really shortens that time that you spend traveling in atmosphere, even down to cities, from outposts, whatever it might be. This is carrying us further into the videos. And I really actually hope that that means also maybe, possibly, they would scale up planets. So they've talked about possibly scaling up planets recently. And one of the reasons they didn't want to before was because the travel distances would take a long time traveling to and from atmosphere. That won't matter as much if Quantum Boost carries us slower. So this is all copium. This is speculation. This isn't confirmed. There's no reason that this might happen. Well, there are reasons it might happen. There's no reason to think it will. But I have my hopes, and I'm hoping that planets might scale up because it seems like Quantum Boost is carrying us deeper into atmosphere. Either way, let's let them talk a little bit more about crafting before we get into that.
What that inherently means is that we're still going to have a mode that is dedicated to fighting and having combat. There is going to be a mode that's dedicated to your quantum. But we're going to be removing some of the fail-safe restrictions, yes, that had when you switching between these modes. We're going to be moving towards one cohesive speed between all operator modes. That speed is going to be more akin to what you'd imagine SCM speeds are now, but there's two big, huge caveats that come into that. First off is crafting. So crafting will allow you to upgrade your ship and to tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you want to have combat at higher speeds, if you have a tier 5 ship and you have the best thrusters and you've specialized, you've bought an interceptor ship, that will be more applicable to those types of ships. So that gives people options to choose, like I want to have this type of gameplay versus this type of gameplay. Having that cohesive, unified speed, the one thing that we really need to address is this kind of like nav flight mode that is kind of, it sits in this very odd position in terms of you get out of an LZ and you're flying up to the space station, in atmosphere your speed is really closer to SCM speeds anyway. You're not flying at 1,000 meters a second. You can pick up start a bounty hunter mission now, be sent to another planet, and then the closest quantum point to that POI might be 500 kilometers away. And that means that, as we add more dense POIs, that's going to only exacerbate this situation because we can't have quantum markers everywhere. And when we start to add more space exploration and more missions towards the different guilds that we're operating on, where you're having to go into deep space and go into these large distances, you don't want to be in a position where that's taking such a huge amount of time. We want you to be spending more time doing the mission than flying there.
Okay. It's another key point. People constantly are freaking out that this game has too many time sinks. Like, listen to what the people who are making this game say. They know. They're time sinks with existent, expected, designed ways of getting around them if you plan or if you play in certain ways. And this is them talking about one of them. We want to make it so that
amount of time.
If you are in a certain position, or you want to get going somewhere, or you have a ship that can do it, you can quantum boost to get to a location faster. Maybe you don't have as much quantum fuel. Maybe you don't have a ship with as good a quantum drive, whatever it might be. That's where the differences start to come in. There's the same thing with being able to skip trains because you can log off somewhere else. Like, they give you ways to get around the time sinks that might exist in the game, but they still exist so that the scale and the whole fact that you are utilizing a time sink exists. It's kind of like when stores will raise the prices of something so that they can put them on sale. Like, you make a time sink in a game, and then you give players a way to earn or play around that time sink so that the gameplay has more value. It can go too far, obviously. Like, you can do it with money, and then it's just pay to play and stuff. But when you do it gameplay related, I think it's a really good idea. And key to note when you talk or think about the time sinks that are in the game, look for ways around them. Sometimes, a lot of times there are.
And more missions towards the different guilds that we're operating on, where you're having to go into deep space and go into these large distances. You don't want to be in a position where that's taking such a huge amount of time. We want you to be spending more time doing the mission than flying there. This is where Quantum Boost comes in. Now, the way that Quantum Boost works is it connects your flight speeds to your quantum travel. So quantum travel is for flying millions of kilometers away when you have a specific quantum marker that you're flying towards. Then you've got your flight speeds, which should be, say sub 20 kilometers, where you're flying around, exploring on the planet, or fighting at a POI, or doing a bounty hunting. But anywhere above that we want to kind of accelerate that process of that navigation. And Quantum Boost goes all the way up to your top speed of SCM.
Okay. I think he just completely misspeaks here. I'm pretty sure he means it goes all the way down to your top speed of nav and then up to something else. But he says all the way up to the top speed of SCM, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Navigation. And Quantum Boost goes all the way up to your top speed of SCM, or top speed of our current nav mode, all the way up to essentially a tenth of quantum travel speed. You have this spectrum of speeds that allow you to navigate the large spaces in our game, but also then still stay true to some of the intentions that we delivered with master modes.
Master modes we talked a lot about, and the combat side.
I'm really curious about what that means in detail. Like they're being very, it's not exact, right? They're talking about from the current nav speed, is that 1,000 meters per second? Is that 1,300, 1,400 meters per second? Or are you using that as ballpark? Are you talking 2,000 meters per second? How do we like, I've got so many more questions from this, which is just how this always works. But I do wonder how quickly these kinds of changes are going to be coming in.
Broadly staying the same. The nav side that was the limiting factor, we often said, like, it's too fast, but not fast enough. The amount of times we watch new players go into nav, go towards a station, and then we'd be sat there going, they've not stopped in time. So
I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not a huge fan of them. Like, I don't think that even needed to be said, really. As changing the entire flight model so that people don't crash. Like, you guys know me. I'm the kind of person who crashes, okay? You don't have to. I'm not privileged in this situation. If there's a surface of a planet, I'm going to hit it. Okay? Don't put that near me because I'm going to hit it or don't let me fly. I feel like it's a little bit, that's a big way to give a crutch, you know? There could be a lot of different things you could do. Space stations automatically impose flight limitations on ships when they're near them, right? Like if you're near a space station, there is a 5-kilometer area in which that space station can automatically limit the speeds of ships. There you go. I don't think changing the entire flight model just because people crash, it makes I don't know about that.
it's too fast, but not fast enough. The amount of times we watch new players.
I like full control over my ship too, but it would make sense for me for space stations to impose speed limits around the space station. Not every location, but space stations particularly obviously are very valuable, very large places with civilians moving around. That makes sense.
We were left with this sort of nav mode that didn't quite do what we wanted. And it also, because it's quantum and it's creating a bubble around your ship, allows us less friction in the traversal, because you go in quantum, you come out quantum, you don't have to apply all this G-force.
The rules of physics are
different because you're not physically hurtling at that speed. You're wrapping a bubble of time and space around yourself. So
This is also another reason why they would probably be able to say, oh yeah, you can just drop down in the atmosphere doing this because that wind resistance does not matter. We can make you fly as fast as we want in atmosphere.
you come out, you can stop dead. You're not having that expanse moment where you're all being ripped apart from the G-force. So you see that space station coming towards you, you stop.
The one limitation that we are retaining is the fact that you can't have your quantum drive enabled and also your shields. And ultimately, that's a binary decision. Operator modes will start.
I do still think that would be better to manage that via engineering, but I can also understand why they wouldn't want to do it.
Off as the default configuration that we've set in terms of the controls, in terms of the MFDs and what you're casting onto your HUD, in terms of your resource network presets. But that doesn't stop you from then going in and customizing it. We're providing an initial, hey, this is what we think is a good default setting. But then it's up to the players then to customize what they want on their cast, what they want on the MFDs, and then they have options to them. And they shouldn't have this constant switching modes to gain access to certain operator modes. We're removing some of that friction.
And through all of this, because that bind.
John Crew is a vehicle director, so he handles all the vehicle production, and this is a vehicle feature. So he has a hand in this. And he's also just generally a ship guy. He's good to have there if you have questions for other stuff, I guess.
Distinction is between modes. You have to be in this mode or this mode, and there's all these very strict rules between those modes. You keep your weapons through all this, so this now becomes a more tactical decision in combat. But if you need that sudden burst of speed, either to get away from something or to catch up to something, you make the choice. You sacrifice your shields, certainly, but you can still bring your weapons to bear and stuff. Get there, and the second you're out,
and ultimately
that is a pretty key point. I think there are a lot of different ways to look at these changes, but this being one is the idea of player freedom. So we're seeing master modes be removed. Essentially, that's what they just said here. Nav mode is gone, right? Or you could say nav mode has changed to quantum mode or travel mode, whatever they're going to call it. There's a mode for quantum traveling. There's a mode for mining. There's a mode for missiles, right? There's missile operator mode. There is a salvage operation mode, tractor beam operator mode. There's quantum travel operator mode, which I guess is what we have now. That's what they're going to change into. Now they're going to have SCM be its own operator mode. Yeah, there's also scanning operator mode. So there's like 8 operator modes now. One of them will now be quantum, and one of them will be, I guess, guns and missiles will still be their own. So master modes be gone. Operator modes are encompassing, I mean, we're going back to what it was, really. Because they were essentially operator modes before. So at this point, you will be able to jump between the different modes and do everything you need to when you're mining and all that stuff. But then you switch over to your quantum mode and you're losing shields. So we're only losing in this change. We're actually gaining back a little bit of player freedom with the weapons, which is nice, but we're still retaining that idea that the shields are limited. I think it would be interesting to see if there is any difference in how the weapons drain your power. Like if you are going faster and you're using more of your thrust, or if it's just how it is now. Because right now you can basically allocate power to all your weapons and stuff, and they'll drain themselves, but they won't affect anything else. And I'm guessing it'll stay the same. So we're still not getting that kind of idea of systems bouncing off each other and affecting how you can use them, which I wish is how they had done this, but at least we're getting back the use of our weapons when we want. And we'll just have to see how that works in game when they deliver it, how this happens how this functions when we get into cat and mouse scenarios, when you're getting pirated, when you're playing with org mates, and get that feedback, and hopefully this system works better than the last one did. But they're switching, they're changing direction a little bit with this. They're keeping the idea behind master modes, I think, what they were doing, but they are getting rid of master modes themselves by name. And they're also just basically getting rid of high-speed flight. All of the feedback that CIG got, not even CIG, hell, you guys were getting feedback, man. So many people were coming into this chat saying how bad master modes was. You would think you guys were part of the feedback crew at CIG. Everywhere you looked, people were saying that master modes was bad. Master modes is ruining the game. Master modes is the reason I'm not playing. I won't be back until they get rid of master modes. Master modes has killed everything. Mrs. Tomato, what has master modes done to Star Citizen? Thank you, killed it. She just went like this. That's why I love you. So now they're getting rid of the master modes by name. But they're keeping the slow speed. People's problems was the slow speeds, but nobody was saying that. They just kept saying that master modes suck. So CIG is now getting rid of master modes, but they're keeping the slow speeds. I don't know if this actually makes all those people happy. Maybe it will, but I find it a little bit funny that a lot of people had problems with certain parts of the flight model, but those parts aren't necessarily being removed. They're just changing master modes, which is what people said was the problem. And I don't know if that's really the problem. We'll see. We'll see how this all factors out. But at the end of the day, our ships can no longer, at least at this moment, whenever this gets implemented, if it comes before crafting and they do all of their upgrades and stuff, which we'll talk about, at that moment that it occurs, we will not be able to fly at 1,000 meters per second anymore. Unless we go into quantum boost, which is, I mean, that sucks, in my opinion. I don't know what that's going to do to low flying, or like weaving in and out of like asteroids and stuff, or racing. I'm not really sure what happens to high speed flight, but this sounds like it's going away. What else did they have to say about this?
It's underpinned by your resource network engineering. So if you're on a single-seater ship, that's obviously at the pilot's behest. But also if you're on a larger multi-crew ship, you can then use the engineering terminal to be able to have those presets available to you.
And through the use of crafting to improve your components and of course your presets and quantum boost rather, you can get up to speeds that are approaching the current nav speed and stuff like that. So we're not taking that speed away. We're defaulting everything to a speed that is closer to today's SCM.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a big statement. They're not taking that speed away. They're defaulting to something closer to SCM.
Of course, your presets and quantum boost rather. You can get up to...
So this is to segue into the idea that you can craft components or craft ships rather that are higher quality and thus can go faster.
Speeds that are approaching the current nav speed and stuff like that. So we're not taking that speed away. We're defaulting everything to a speed that is closer to today's SCM. And then giving the player choices in how and when they can get up to that speed without completely disabling everything.
I mean, ultimately, it allows us to keep the kind of the default. We're trying to move towards a balance across the game where you can start off easier and it gets harder. So we want the default to be open and compatible to lots of players, but then as you start to specialize and it becomes hard to master and you start to work in the different avenues of different professions that you like, that's where you can start to customize your ship. And I think there's a key takeaway or a key point to also make is that if you don't want to craft, if you don't want to go down that route because you just want to shoot ships and be a combat pilot, or you just want to be a miner or a space trucker, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still gain access to this because player trading is going to be something that allows players to gain access to these components and ships without having to go through some of the grind that they have, and obviously they're now reaping the benefits of that, but you have lots of choice.
Obviously,
we're gonna have to see how that works. Oh my god, these wheel locks. We're gonna have to see how that works, and how much the speeds actually change based on upgrading and crafting and stuff. We'll see how they implement it. It's an interesting choice. I'm more kind of in this boat of like, but what about high speed flight? To be honest, it's not something I did a lot. It's not like I would go out there and low speed all the time and like fly through canyons and that's my thing. But God, I love doing it when I can. And I don't know. I would hope that we could still like just kind of cruise around at 7 to 1,000 meters per second and you know, hang out in that way, and then also do quantum boost if we wanted to. But it kind of sounds like that might not be happening. I don't know, because they can't have it do that, right? They're having a default speed in which your guns and shields both work in SCM mode. So they can't just have SCM go up to 1,000 meters per second, or else that's the exact same thing that they had before. There's no restriction on slowing down combat. So I don't know. It's also like when you're mining, when you're salvaging, when you're flying around looking for something on the ground, it's nice to fly at 500 instead of 250.
Our goals and our vision for what we want this to be, and hope it applies to as many people as possible. What I like about this is that you can never go wrong with putting the choice in the player's hands. At any given situation, when you're going to want your speed, when you're going to want your shields, you'll always have your weapons from now on. So like this, just put those choices in the player's hands and let them decide for themselves. It's one of those things unique about Star Citizen is that we get to develop this And then we don't have to wonder. We can put it into players' hands and get that feedback immediately and then take it in. I think there's a real chance for this to be the spaceship experience we've been working towards this whole time.
I think the big thing to take away from all the things that we've discussed is that none of these things are designed or implemented in isolation. And where we're trying to go is that, you know, when we talk about combat that is, say, not as fast as it was in previous updates, hopefully people understand we're doing that not just because we don't like fast combat, it's because we want to give players options to gain fast combat or gain slower combat, depending on what choices they make with crafting or their purchases. Then it's on a scenario where, you know, capital warfare is, you know, you need to be able to use precision targeting, and that's why we developed that feature so that you can have good subcomponent targeting. And I think when you start to see some of this bigger picture come together, and you start to see all of these individual pieces connect, you might not agree with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. That's how we're trying to connect all these pieces together to create this experience that ultimately Chris is the one that is setting that vision, and we're trying to execute on that vision for Chris. And
you made a video last year about tying performance of ships to engineering, but here they're describing it as crafting. I think it's pretty key that they're connecting crafting to ship performance. They're essentially making crafting one of the most important things in the game now. It was already important, base building and crafting, obviously, but the importance of it before, with item rareness and usefulness and stats and all that stuff, the ability to monetize that through base building and crafting or and shipping when you craft and hosting your own player store, all this stuff is drawing a lot, like an absolute ton of focus to crafting as the way to play this game. And this draws a huge emphasis to it. So anything that affects crafting now will affect the whole game, which is interesting, because will crafting be affected by monetization at some point? I like that idea of it being affected by engineering. That's what I was hoping they'd do, and I wish they did, but I think that's hard to balance. That being said, this will also be hard to balance. If you're talking about ship performance and thrusters strength and how fast a ship can go, and then you look at how many different ships are in the game and how many different tiers of each of those ships there can be, and then the components you can put on them, the amount of balance you're going to have to do to make that work is insane. So either way, it looks like they are stealing an absolute monster of balance in the face. And I do wonder just how well it's going to go for them.
And that is what we're trying to work towards, and hopefully people can start to see some of these pieces connect together and why some of these decisions have been made. And you know, and hopefully they enjoy it ultimately at the end of the day.
So Rich, John, thank you so much for taking the time to share this vision of Star Citizen's spaceship gameplay. I think there's no better place to do that than IAE, a celebration of all spacecraft and vehicles in Star Citizen. It's come to my attention that the last two parts, when I've attempted to move us on to our next topic, folks have been changing the channel. So I don't want you to do that here. Up next, I'm going to talk directly with John Crew and explain to him my true vision for the spaceship jalopy once and for all.
Change the channel.
Hey, you! I love freaking Mark Habens in there. So yeah, that's kind of a look at where they're going with this. Ultimately, we are very much headed back in the direction of what was going on with the flight model before master modes, but not all the way. In the sense that they're going, so master modes itself, like the think of master modes as a module of the gameplay that was in the flight model. They're taking out some of the little components of master modes, moving them over here, getting rid of this module, right? Master modes is gone. Originally, we had a system that related to both master modes and operator modes. Now it's just operator modes. Key point that is sticking around for master modes is a ship speed reduction that's being kept by default. So we're losing nav master mode. SCM is being moved to an operator mode. Actually, it's not even being moved to an operator mode. It's literally just being applied to the rest of the operator modes that already existed, because we had guns operator mode and we had missiles operator mode. Those were your SCM operator modes before. So both nav mode and SCM mode are being removed. Missile and guns mode will exist. A overall speed limit will be set across all ships, probably around 300 meters per second. As you craft ships, you can upgrade and get better tiers to increase that speed of your ships. but you can also switch over to your quantum operation mode and use quantum boost to travel anywhere from about 1,000 meters per second up to 1/10 of quantum travel speed, or you can use a quantum travel to go at 1/3 or so the speed of light, 1/10 the speed of light to get across star systems. So that's how travel is going to work now. That's the changes that we're seeing announced here when it comes to movement and master modes. The other part of the change that we just heard about was what's coming to crafting, which I kind of mentioned already. That is that crafting will have a big impact on whether or not you can actually fly faster, and which ships you specifically craft or upgrade are going to be more important now than they were post CitizenCon. These are the ships that you want to perform the best. I would worry about the idea that every ship just automatically tries to be a high tier and anything in a lower tier can't compete. Those are the situations, like if they're going to go forward with this, I think they should really consult with our competitive players, our PvP wing of Star Citizen, the folks who fly at high levels of combat and skill, in order to make sure that even though they are making it so that the game, the items, the ships that you get in game, the amount that you play indicates or defines how well your ship can fly, they also are making sure that within that model, you can fly a ship better than it's meant to. But in my opinion, I think they do need to thread a fine line here and make it so that, yes, your in-game items, the amount of time you've played, the work you've put into the game, defines how well your ship flies. But I also think there should be some room for you to be able to fly better in a tier 5 or tier 1 ship than somebody else in their tier 4. Should have some variability there. Right, I'm not saying listen to these people and what they want. I'm saying listen to these people to do what I want. Which is to just make sure there is still some skill involved in flying these ships, and it's not all down to the tier or how it's crafted. But yeah, that is what we really just reviewed in terms of changes coming. I'll have a more simplified video about this later this week to talk more about it, because this is, I think, it's like a kind of big but not super big but also kind of big change. It's like it goes back and forth. Probably won't have a huge impact on the game for a little while, but we'll see. Either way, hope you learned something from that.